Donald Trump just dropped a major export threat against Canada, not a tariff adjustment, not a negotiating signal, a direct, specific threat to cut off American exports that Canada depends on: agricultural technology, semiconductor components, and advanced manufacturing equipment. Delivered through a formal White House economic directive that sources inside 3 separate federal agencies, described to Reuters as the most aggressive unilateral trade instrument this administration has deployed since taking office. The directive gave Ottawa 96 hours to withdraw every pending USMCA dispute panel challenge, suspend its retaliatory tariff schedule, and return to bilateral negotiations on American terms, or face export restrictions so comprehensive that Canadian industrial production would feel the impact within 30 days. Mark Carney did not call an emergency cabinet meeting. He did not request a diplomatic channel. He walked to a podium and made a surprise announcement so unexpected, so strategically sophisticated, and so immediately consequential that a senior White House trade advisor told Politico on Background that nobody in this building saw that coming. What is happening right now reaches far beyond a trade confrontation between 2 neighboring governments. This is a test of whether the most integrated bilateral economic relationship in human history can survive an executive branch that has decided coercion is a strategy, and whether a G7 prime minister with a central banker's understanding of economic pressure points can consistently outmaneuver threats that were designed for opponents who have no options. Canada has options. Carney just used one that Washington did not have on its list. Hit that subscribe button right now, because this story is accelerating and you will not want to miss a single development as it unfolds. So what exactly triggered this confrontation? On April 1st, 2026, the Trump White House released what it formally titled the American Export Sovereignty Directive, a document that, according to sources familiar with its preparation, had been in development inside the Commerce Department and the Office of the United States Trade Representative since mid-March, accelerated after Canada's USMCA auto tariff challenge was accepted for expedited dispute panel review. The directive invoked Section 1753 of the Export Control Reform Act, authorizing the President to restrict exports of goods deemed essential to American national economic security when a trading partner has taken actions determined to be contrary to American interests. The specific goods listed in the directive were not random. Agricultural biotechnology inputs, including seed treatments and crop protection chemicals manufactured by American companies and used extensively by Canadian prairie farmers, appeared on page 1. Semiconductor fabrication components used in Canadian technology manufacturing were on page 2. Advanced CNC machining equipment critical to Canadian aerospace and auto parts production was on page 3. Each category was selected with surgical precision to maximize pressure on the Canadian industries most politically sensitive to Carney's governing coalition. Sources inside Global Affairs Canada described the targeting as deliberate, sophisticated, and clearly the work of people who had studied the Canadian economy carefully. This is not just another political controversy. Canada's agricultural sector, the wheat, canola, and pulse crop producers of Saskatchewan, Alberta, and Manitoba, depends on American manufactured crop inputs that do not have immediately available substitutes from non-American suppliers at commercial scale. The directive was designed to make that dependency hurt fast. And believe me, when a prime minister responds to that kind of targeted economic pressure with a surprise announcement that the White House did not see coming, the preparation behind that response has been running longer and deeper than anyone in Washington realized. Here's the full picture of what had been building to this moment. The escalation trajectory had been accelerating since late March 2026, when Canada's coordinated response to Trump's tweet-based trade ban, the response in which Carney told international television that a tweet is not a law, while 3 G7 finance ministers called Ottawa in solidarity, had produced what sources inside the administration described as a genuine reevaluation of tactics. The tweet approach had failed publicly and documentably. The formal directive approach was the administration's answer to that failure, a legally grounded instrument citing specific statutory authority with a clear deadline and a specific list of demands. But there was a problem the administration had not fully accounted for. According to reporting from the Financial Times and the Globe and Mail, Canada's trade response team had been wargaming American export restriction scenarios since January 2026, not generically, specifically. The Global Affairs Canada contingency planning documents, described by 3 sources familiar with their contents but not publicly released, included a dedicated section on American export control escalation that identified the most likely targeted sectors, modeled the economic impact timelines, and outlined a Canadian counter-strategy built around a single core principle. When Washington restricts exports, Ottawa announces alternatives that already exist. They were not scrambling, they were waiting. Smash that like button right now if you are beginning to understand the depth of preparation behind what Canada has been doing throughout this entire confrontation. And here's where it really gets serious. At 11:22 a.m. on April 1st, the White House Export Sovereignty Directive hit the wire. At 11:47 a.m., 25 minutes later, Mark Carney's office notified the press gallery that the Prime Minister would make an announcement at noon. Not a response announcement, a surprise announcement. The framing was deliberate. Canada was not reacting to Trump. Canada was announcing something it had decided to do. At noon, Carney stepped to the podium at Rideau Cottage. His expression carried what one veteran parliamentary correspondent described as the specific quality of composure that precedes a statement the speaker knows will move markets. He did not mention the White House directive for the first 90 seconds. Canada has concluded a landmark agricultural technology partnership agreement with the European Union, the United Kingdom, Australia, and New Zealand, Carney began, effective immediately, providing Canadian farmers with guaranteed access to European-manufactured crop inputs, British agricultural biotechnology, Australian seed treatment technology, and New Zealand precision agriculture systems, at terms that are, in several categories, more favorable than existing American supply arrangements. A journalist in the second row visibly exhaled. This agreement, Carney continued, his cadence unhurried, was finalized on March 28th. It has been in negotiation since February 4th. It covers 94% of the agricultural input categories referenced in this morning's American Export Directive. He paused for exactly 2 seconds. Canada noted the directive. Canada had already addressed it. The market reaction was immediate and specific. American agricultural biotechnology stocks, the companies whose Canadian export revenues were the leverage instrument inside the White House directive, fell between 2.8% and 4.1% within 30 minutes of Carney's statement. The reason was straightforward. An export restriction only generates leverage if the target has no alternative supply. Carney had just announced, with documented specificity, that Canada had alternative supply covering 94% of the restricted categories, finalized 3 days before the directive was issued. The leverage had evaporated before it was deployed. Chicago agricultural commodity markets registered the announcement as a supply chain stability signal for Canadian crop production. The Canadian dollar strengthened 0.6% against the US dollar within the hour. And in Brussels, the European Commission's trade spokesperson confirmed the partnership agreement's existence and its March 28th effective date in a statement issued at 12:15 p.m. Ottawa time, confirming that Canada's announcement was not